Hey everyone, it's Two Noobs Talking coming at you once again. It's episode 14 with John Tracy. I'm Matt Craig. John, how you doing tonight, man? What's going on?
What's going on, Matt? How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Let's throw up screenshot one, shall we? And let's talk a little COVID. Um, Really, I think the best thing to think about this presentation here that we've got, you hear all about, the number of confirmed cases, this, that, and not much in the way of positive news. Well, this article here on Bloomberg, and we'll have a copy of this link in our show notes, is really, really good. They are basically tracking the number of vaccine doses that have been administered really since mid-December. And John, if you could just scroll up here real quick when you get a chance, more than close to 38 million shots have been given of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines worldwide across 49 countries. The US alone has administered 13 million of the 38 million that have been dosed out so far. Worldwide, the latest rate has been 2.41 million doses a day on average. And then, of course, you have the vaccinations in the United States beginning just before Christmas, around December 14th, with the healthcare frontline workers. And so far, 13 million shots of those have been administered. So it's roughly averaging just under 850,000 doses per day. And then down below, as you scroll down on the website, when you get a chance to see it on the show notes, you can see that it's broken down by individual state and how many are administered over 1,000, in terms of your state's population, things along those lines. West Virginia leading the way. Who would have ever thought West Virginia would be leading the way in anything, John?
Good job, West Virginia. I spent some time there. It's not a bad place.
There you go. Yeah. So as you can scroll down here, you got the table that's listing out how many have been distributed, how many have been administered. Texas leading the way in terms of doses administered.
As always.
1.1 million already. California not that far behind with 1.07 million, and then Florida. And then, of course, my home state, Pennsylvania, just under 500,000, 475,000 administered. We got over 1 million distributed. So real good progress being made. Good initial start. John, what do you think so far of this?
Actually, funny story, Arizona always at the bottom of the list in every chart we ever put out. Have you ever noticed that?
I don't know what's going on there,
but at the bottom of the list. Any chart, it's not on purpose, guys. It's not on purpose, yeah, but every chart we seem to share with you guys, Arizona's like always bringing up the rear.
Who would have ever thought?
We learned they couldn't count earlier this year.
That's right.
Yeah. We kid because we care.
That's right.
They're doing well. I listened to a podcast, Talk is Jericho. People should know him from our show, from our AEW Obsession. He had a Dr. Alex Patel on earlier in the week, and it was a really good listen. I got a chance to listen to the whole thing, and I pulled a couple quotes from it because I wanted to bring it to people's attention. It definitely will be in the show notes how to get access to it. Just talking about the vaccines, where he was talking about there's more than just two. Matt, as you know, there's the AstraZeneca one that is getting through its final trials. And I think you were telling me earlier that Johnson & Johnson's even ahead of that.
Very close to it. Yeah. In fact, they're almost going to be applying for EUA, emergency use authorization, I think probably in the next 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks out. So they're very close. Very close. Yeah.
That's great. That's what he was saying. He was also given the differences between the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, which the Pfizer vaccine is going more to the healthcare workers and the Moderna is more going to the people. And the reason he was saying that was something, Matt, you know a little bit about with the freezing temperature of the Pfizer vaccine. It has to be colder than the Moderna.
Packed ice. Yeah. They had to basically pack the Pfizer vaccine in dry ice. Whereas Moderna, you can store it in a regular freezer. That's like, again, I think I said in a previous podcast, thank God for dry ice and that invention.
Exactly.
Because like, if we didn't have that, then it would be all Moderna. And although Moderna made tremendous strides, it's still, you want to have as many vaccines being rolled out. I don't know Johnson & Johnson, whether or not they've got something. I do know it's only one shot. That's what I've heard. And I don't know about AstraZeneca and their storage as of yet, but we'll.
Yeah, not sure, but we just know that they're coming down the pike. That's basically. Real quick, just want to touch on something he also spoke about. This is Dr. Alex Patel. He's a ICU doctor in Toronto. He was on the Chris Jericho podcast again. Talk is Jericho. Great podcast if you guys like wrestling or conspiracy theories or actually anything.
Yeah.
He interviews everybody.
Yeah.
I love his interviews because he interviews literally anybody. He'll interview Gene Simmons from Kiss one week and then a doctor from the next week. Like, that's what I love about him.
Yeah.
What he was saying is the one thing that he stressed about lockdowns was he is not in favor of worldwide lockdowns because he's learning through being in the ICU and treating patients is being outside is way more important than being inside. And that's why he thinks that the spike in the cases are happening in the winter because everybody's kind of, closed off indoors, that kind of thing, which will bring us to our next wonderful breakthrough. But he was saying that, and I thought I would bring that to everybody's attention. He was more like, go outside. It's better for you if you go outside. He was saying that with AEW that does their wrestling show outside, that they're way better off
being outdoors.
Because they're not dealing with the inside. There's walls. There's so many things that can go wrong with ventilation systems and all that, blah, blah, blah. So outside was his big thing. Jericho also asked him a great question because I didn't know the answer to this. So I want to hopefully, this helps someone. He was asking about the flu, the swine flu, the H1N1 and Corona. Are they all the same thing? And the doctor was simply explaining that, no, Corona's more like SARS-2. We all know that. That was a couple years ago where that came around. He was saying that was more SARS. It's closer to SARS-2. It spreads quicker than SARS-2 is what he was explaining. And he was basically, the way he explained coronavirus was that it's a mutation of the common cold that comes around every year. So you're gonna see variations of this throughout time. It's not really going away, but it's going to be manageable is what he kind of said in the whole thing. And he thought by 2022, you could go to your local CVS or Walgreens and you're going to be able to get that shot just like you get the flu vaccine. That was his last point that I wrote down that he made. So really good thing. Check it out. It's in our show notes.
Yeah, no, that's really, really, really good, John. I still can't get over the fact that it was Chris Jericho. That's awesome. I love the fact that Jericho because he'll, like, to your point, you're right. He'll like interview anybody. He'll interview Anna Jay, or then he'll interview, like he interviewed Brody Lee before he passed. And then of course now he's interviewing this doctor. That's amazing. That's really, really cool.
Actually, it's the second time he's been on his show too, which is cool. It just big props to Jericho and the work that he does.
Absolutely. I love the fact too that this doc was saying, go outside, don't stay indoors, don't stay sheltered in, because that's what we heard originally in the beginning part of all of this pandemic, right? We heard a lot of stay indoors, wash your hands, social distance, 6 feet, all that kind of stuff. He's saying, no, we're finding more and more that if you go outside more, you have a better likelihood that you're going to do okay at the end of all of this, that you don't have to necessarily just be shuttered inside. And I think that's so important for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's like you could easily just get stir crazy being indoors and what do you do and all that kind of stuff. But
fear will keep you indoors, but knowledge will, let you get outside and breathe a little. It is a respiratory disease, so breathing's kind of important.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's an understatement. But yeah, it's like, it kind of just bodes to like what I've seen too, like locally here where I live. I just live not that far away, like maybe 5 minutes away from Valley Forge Park here in Pennsylvania. And it's wide open every weekend, especially when it's like mild here in the winter. People are just going all the time, walking those paths. So that's really important. And then, of course, like SARS. Well, what's SARS mean? Well, that's severe acute respiratory syndrome. That's what SARS stands for. That's, I want to kind of get that across as well. So the coronavirus is, I would agree, very similar to common cold, where it's like you're always coughing, you're always sneezing, all that kind of stuff. It's respiratory. It's your system is working to try and get that virus out of your system. In my case, it's overdrive. I've been sneezing since I came out of the womb. So I don't know what's going on there, but
I'm an allergy kid also. So.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. But luckily it's like I haven't been allergic to any shots or anything of that sort. So it's like, okay, well, I'm blessed in that regard. But that's so important. I think, the fact that this doc was basically saying, hey, look, listen, this is more of a common cold mutation. It's going to be around, but it's not nearly as bad as we think it is. That's what I gleaned from it.
He had a ton of, I mean, he wasn't downplaying the fact that
yeah.
He also talked about not to make his podcast take over our podcast, but he talked about, there's a lot of stuff. So it definitely, if you're interested in the stuff, he's definitely worth a listen. Very intelligent man. I wouldn't have brought him here if he wasn't.
Well, yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, let's throw up screenshot 2 for our audience here. And for our audio listeners, this is a Jerusalem Post article that, John, I think you had found, or maybe I had found. I'm not quite sure. Don't remember.
Yeah, who remembers? The research is 99.9% COVID-19 virus dead in 30 seconds with UV LED.
Yeah.
That's
amazing.
Something.
Yeah, and it goes to what Doc Patel's point was, and the fact that if you go outside, it's a really, really good thing because UV rays come from the sun. And the article basically I'll just read it real briefly here. Ultraviolet radiation is a common method of killing bacteria and viruses. So now researchers essentially from Tel Aviv have proven that the coronavirus can be killed efficiently, quickly, and cheaply using UV light emitting diodes, or UV LEDs, at specific frequencies. And basically, these researchers in Tel Aviv have found that if they have these LED light bulbs, UV LED light bulbs, that they could destroy the coronavirus in less than 30 seconds, like a commercial break. And the study is the first of its kind in the world. And an article is posted in this medical journal. And again, we'll link to this in our show notes for your further research. But John,
absolutely
huge, right? I mean, this is big. And this kind of goes to a little bit of, I'll share a little brief story. My dad, who we've had on this podcast before, he's basically working as a trustee within a church. And he found, he had heard that UV LEDs were helping to lower, obviously kill or destroy bacteria and viruses. Well, they've put in UV LEDs in the church's air conditioning and heating ducts. So that is basically, as you get, the outside world filters through all the bacteria and dust, those bacteria and viruses are getting killed inside the air conditioning ducts. That's huge. That's huge for a church. That's huge for an office building. And I wouldn't be surprised if multiple office buildings are thinking of doing that, if not doing that already.
Oh, absolutely. It's when I think I found the study and passed it on to you, and then we talked about it for days because of how amazing that study is. Like the first of its kind.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure this was in the back burner at some point, in a study.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of shows how many leaps and bounds science has taken in the last couple of years. They're just like, it's constantly like, it's the first of its kind. It's the first of its kind. Like they're really, it seems like science has taken a huge turn for the better.
Yeah.
With being able to get the proper funding from their governments. And
mm-hmm.
It's really like, that's really cool. Like the fact that like you said, you can install a UV light. It's not technically the UV light from the sun. It's more turned up from what we were reading. But if you could put that light, which is a simple, basic LED UV, you can get it, anywhere.
Yeah.
You turn that thing up, you put it in your ventilation system, in your intake. I know a little bit about ventilation systems.
There you go.
Boom, air comes in, UV hits air goes around it. You're sending it to where it needs to go. Not that I know that much about, because I don't know where it goes after that. There's an exchange or something like that. But that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It seems like a cheaper than paying someone 14 days to sit at home because they got the coronavirus.
Huge.
Or 14 days after 14 days.
Yeah, exactly.
You got it for a while, and then you're not allowed to come back for a while. So
yeah, exactly. exactly.
It seems way more cost effective than that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think it's so vital too, because it's like you think about that. If they can get that, if it's a matter of just putting an UV LED light in office environments, I'm thinking like specifically for me, I know you work primarily outdoors. You get
Yes.
the UV from the sun. That's great. For me though, indoors all day in an office environment, and even working from home, indoors all day, not really getting much sun. I kind of need to have that kind of protection. I would want that kind of protection
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
have, something along those lines. It would be huge, be gigantic. And I love the fact that, to your point, science is making huge, huge strides when it comes to the coronavirus day in and day out, which I kind of figured they would. The more they know about the virus, the better it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. We were saying that in the beginning. So I'm glad to see it come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we wanted to kind of share those like links and things. I still can't get over the Jericho podcast. I think that's great. But then we also have the Bloomberg one, which is even better. I think I love that as well. So if you wanted to keep track of how many shots have been administered, look at that instead of always looking towards number of confirmed cases, number of dead. Look there, because you'll see obviously.
Yeah, there's more that we've put together with this. There's more you can look at for positivity. You don't have to worry so much about, like, I think to your point with looking at these places, you can even see that the coronavirus is kind of tailing itself down, because Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they don't have the tracker popping up every time you go on your social media account. It's not like, ding, let me tell you how many cases are in the world.
Yeah.
It almost seems like we've gotten a grip on it worldwide. So I'm not saying it's they're not doing it on purpose.
Exactly.
But it's our natural reaction with social media to inundate.
Yeah.
But you can kind of see it, how that's with the vaccines are coming. It's kind of moving back that way.
Yeah.
It's not as serious as it was. That's kind of my point. I can't say that word that I can't say. Apparently my tongue doesn't work for that word today.
You have a very good way to segue this, John, because, we talked about this last week a little bit with Neil Postman and Amusing Ourselves to Death, that book, and gaslighting and all that kind of stuff, and Facebook and Twitter. They're right. You're going in there. You're always checking out how many cases there are. Let's talk. Unfortunately, this is not an attack on Jack Dorsey. We want to make that very clear, but this is very, very concerning.
We don't like him, but it's not.
We don't like him here, and that's fine. They probably don't like us either, but that's fine too.
I don't think his shareholders like him at this point, about how much money he's losing them.
Exactly.
Wow. I sent Matt an article right before we went on. Like, they're losing some straight cash.
Oh yeah.
So
here, let's talk about this article here, because this appeared, I think, in the New York Post, and basically it was about the Twitter crackdown in regards to, what happened in the U.S. Capitol last week, and that Dorsey basically had said, well, the crackdown's going to be bigger than the Trump ban. And so the thought is, okay, well, what the heck's going on here? You can't, this organization and others like the other social media giants, which we'll go forward in great detail here. This is really concerning, John, because we're in a country where we have the right to have free speech, right? We have the right to defend our opinion in the civil square. We have the right to defend our opinion in the public square. We have our right, and others that disagree can disagree with us, should be civilly in a public square.
No, absolutely. That's why we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. People can comment to us. We have email. You can comment in the comment section in YouTube. Yeah. Like we can, everybody, I think everybody in their right mind is okay with a little bit of, confrontation and talking and disagreeing. But this outright, and, I could care less that they got rid of Donald Trump's personal account. I mean, I know a ton of people on social media that get zapped every once in a while because they don't know how to hold their tongue. I'm one of them, and I haven't got zapped yet, so I can't even figure that out. But I know a lot of people that, hey, why haven't you been on Facebook in 6 months? Well, Facebook told me I had to go to Facebook jail. I know people like that. I'm okay with them getting rid of his personal account. The thing that really shocked me was the POTUS account.
Yeah.
Because even if he's a nutcase, you zapped the president of the United States Twitter account.
Yeah.
That shocked me a little. And I know you have a little bit to say about that. That shocked me a little.
It did. It did shock me as well. Not so much a big fan of Trump as well, but this is the president of the United States post account. This is like whoever the sitting president is, they have their own Twitter account. You know, my dad had one when he was adjutant general.
Mm-hmm.
The adjutant general has its own Twitter account, that kind of thing. Should you use it responsibly? Absolutely. I want to make that very clear. You should use any social media account very responsibly.
Yes.
But the issue we've got is the fact that this tech giant is essentially saying in a country that values free speech, no, you cannot use that because we essentially disagree with what you're saying. That's where I think, draw the line here, John.
Well, yeah, that's where it was not necessarily draw the line, just shocking.
Yeah.
Like shocking. Like, I don't know. I don't think I have a full opinion on whether social media, like I know 230 pretty well. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about 230, a lot of people in the tech industry. I've had some conversations with, and they, some feel some way, some feel the other. Like there's a huge debate. I actually made a really good point to a really good friend of ours talking about 230 the other day. It's like almost like 230 is like, can you sue me because I tell you can't cuss in my house? That's like that's such an elementary way to think about 230, but here's my only question with 230 is Twitter acting like a newspaper or a news channel? If they are, 230 needs to go away. Is Twitter a free market social media? Then 230 gets to stay. I understand Twitter shouldn't be sued because Donald Trump said something crazy. I also don't think, going to our next screenshot, that they should have 230 when they do stuff like this.
Exactly. Which is basically censoring a New York Post article on Hunter Biden. Now, this was, of course, a rehash of what happened in October, where we had the big October surprise, right? We had the Hunter Biden deal.
Happens every 4 years.
Exactly. Happens every 4 years on either side of the aisle.
Yep.
Here, this was something that was really harming the Biden campaign. No question about it. The son of now our president-elect, who will take office this week, was involved with a Ukrainian businessman who had some very shady dealings, and Twitter blocked anybody that was attempting to share this New York Post article, and also shut down the New York Post account. And they tried so hard, and by try, they failed miserably, backpedaling every which way to say, well, if they delete the original post, then they could go back in and post it again. No.
They were just biding time, because this was the simple thing. They basically, and I remember this with the Senate committee hearings. Cruz and Dorsey went back and forth. One of the greatest things Cruz ever said on the Senate floor: "Who the hell elected you?" Oh my God, it made me laugh so hard. What basically Twitter was saying, not just Jack Dorsey, but Twitter as a whole, was saying it was hacked materials. We literally have federal agencies that say there are zero claims that it was hacked.
Yeah.
Like nobody has disputed that it was his laptop.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, and
he dropped off in Delaware somewhere.
Exactly. That's where we have to, and we're going to get out of this for a second. But that's where we have to look at, like, it was zero claims of hacked material. And just for people, Parler isn't up right now, but when Parler.com comes up, if you really want to know anything about, you want to know why Parler was nuked, just hashtag Hunter on Parler. You'll see. So it's not for the lighted heart. Don't do it if you don't want to know.
John, for our listeners, and this is really, I think, really important, why don't you talk a little bit more about what Section 230 is? Because I think you mentioned it a couple of times, and there are probably some people out there that don't know what.
I mean, I don't know the whole thing. I have not read the entire bill at all, but I do know that it stops social media accounts from being sued from anything that is posted on their platform. So basically, if John Doe posts terroristic threats on Facebook that he's going to blah 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 or whatever
fill in the blank, whatever,
Twitter or Facebook or whatever, or John's weird social site, I can't be sued because he's a nutcase. The problem that the conservatives have, and actually some left, like conservative left-wing people have a problem with it, is that you can't edit as a newspaper. And still, because if you're editing as a newspaper and you're creating content, you then have to be open to be responsible for what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing with what Twitter did. Not saying it's wrong or right. Like, I don't actually care.
Right.
It's an October surprise. It's politics. Dumb stuff like this happens all the time.
All the time.
But what I would look at the 230 as is they did something you can't do.
Yeah.
The largest newspaper in the oldest
newspaper
largest
in the country.
In the country, you shut down.
Yeah.
In a major story.
Yeah. And it's up to the American people. And I think this is really the big time argument we really are putting forth here. It is up to the American people to make that choice, right? I mean, that is really whether or not they decide this is a true story or whether or not it is a false story.
It's up to us to read it. And that's why we kind of started the podcast in hope. We were tired of fake garbage news.
Yeah.
We were tired of stuff like we're presenting today not getting through.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's why we kind of started it, because we wanted to add value to the research that we were doing personally. And a lot of people we were talking to didn't know what we knew.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, well, it was, this article. I remember a personal friend of ours. I was like, it's this article. And I sent him, like, I never saw that.
Yeah.
And I subscribed to their site.
Go figure. Yeah.
That's what kind of started my wheels turning. I'm like, hey, we're in an age where you need to bring the right stories to the right people.
It's a matter of really just gathering in as much information as you possibly can, and then having that discernment or wisdom, I guess you could say, to decide, okay, is this true or is it not true?
I'm not agreeing with you you pointing wisdom at me. Keep that away from me.
Knock of wood, right?
I hope to be wise someday. Today's not that
might not happen until I'm 82. I'm just saying right now. But yeah, it's like you want to gather as much information as you can. I think that's probably the most important thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't want to just be on one side of the aisle and say, well, this is true. Well,
so let's beat this to death a little bit more. And
why don't we dive into the fifth screenshot?
So, as talking about the New York Post, real quick, just all those down at the bottom that said that Trump can't do anything, which I love. I love the Shopify one. That's great. Just make a stand, Shopify. That's great. Nobody even knew who you were. I didn't know. I had to research who Shopify was. They were like, we stand with everybody else. I'm like, who are you?
Who are you and what are you doing here?
Exactly. Like it was a funny. It's fun. Like we understand that some of them. Facebook, Instagram actually put his accounts back up as of yesterday, I believe. Who knows? They could have taken them down today. I didn't look. But as of yesterday, I had read that they're back up. So they could easily be down right now. And we won't know.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't do that kind of research.
Yeah.
But exactly. We just want to put forth, like, we understand what is going on. And we just want to put this article out because it's important to understand that a lot of people did take that stand.
Yeah.
So if you agree with that stand, you have plenty of support.
Oh, yeah. If you don't, right? I mean, that kind of thing. But
who not to not to use anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It's simple. It's like I can play center with right wing, left wing. If you agree, hey, good. If you disagree, hey, don't use. That's what the world's about.
That's what the world's about. Exactly.
Yeah. If I'm mad, I'm not using Snap. Well, I don't use Snapchat anyway. I've got some theories about that, but we're not going to get into that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Only my kids will get that joke. Hopefully they will all chuckle when they watch this.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
a Snapchat joke.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, more than anything else, it's just, the importance of social media, like in the usage, I think is like, oh my gosh, you see the ramifications of what's happening, and you see the overreaction to what's happening as well with a lot of, with Twitter and what they're doing. It's like, it's just a giant overreaction. And again, I keep going back to that Postman book because I love it. And it's like,
so important.
I can't even imagine what he must be thinking. Like if he was alive today, Postman would be like, what the heck? What I wrote in 1980 came true. What the heck? It must be like a prop. What else am I going to write that's going to be true in the next 20 to 30 years?
I think he knew more than he was.
Yeah.
Great writers have a way of telling the truth without telling you they know the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite quotes ever. And Hunter S. Thompson has a lot of that too. If you read a lot of his stuff, he has a lot of truth in, but he's not one to, he will tell you on Twitter, but he definitely doesn't tell you in his books that he knows, but he'll tell you on Twitter all day long.
Yeah. I can't even begin to tell you.
How did he not get banned? That's another one.
I can't even begin to tell you too, John, about like Postman. It's like from people that I like disagree with on the left side of the aisle, they love Postman. They absolutely love him because it's like, he's so right about the media. The media is just so gosh darn crazy. And it's like, they saw it. I think they saw it too.
I think every normal human being that
they see it,
that doesn't have a political ideology and just has, a family and a job and life. And they have their own value, because there are left and right sides that they're dying on the there are Bernie Sanders people out there that are just like, Bernie is absolutely right, and there's Trump people that are Trump is absolutely right. There are people, but I'm saying like the majority of the world isn't fall on a sword for somebody else. But most people, if they were to read Postman, they'd be like, wow, we just lived that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's what really was shocking to me when I first read that entire book. It was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what we're living in right now. And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Well, let's transition away from all this noise and gaslighting the media, John. You know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? Tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. It's an important day.
I hate to use the phrase minor holiday because this guy was not minor, to say the least.
It's not. It's a real holiday.
It's a real holiday. Martin Luther King Jr. And the day of service of the country. And if there's ever someone to emulate service, it's this guy, this Baptist preacher. And we'll get in a little bit more into him. But John, let's go ahead and pull up the first video clip. This is from an interview with NBC News. This is about a year before he was tragically assassinated. And let's just roll this clip for the first minute or so.
Dr. King, this church is as good a place as any to go back over your commitment to the civil rights movement. When you went out from here into university and then you went to Montgomery, Alabama and started the bus boycotts there, what was the philosophy of the civil rights movement as you saw it then, more than 10 years ago?
Well, I would say then the philosophy was that we must go all out to use legal and nonviolent methods to gain full citizenship rights for the Negro people of our country. Of course, that particular struggle and that philosophy centered on breaking down all of the barriers of legal segregation. So I would say that in that period, the basic thrust for the gaining of citizenship rights for Negroes was to end the humiliation surrounding the whole system of legal segregation.
So to give some context in regards to this, we're talking 1950s and 60s. This is, with John's parents, my parents were growing up during Martin Luther King's lifetime. and there was rampant segregation in the South.
Like he said, legal segregation. It was a wall.
Segregation.
It was a wall. That's why he's so important. He didn't. A lot of people like to paint him as that he was just a preacher. He understood that the laws you had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And the legal segregation was huge. It was bigger than I think anybody could imagine.
Oh yeah.
We'd have to live through that time to understand how the laws were so entangled and so ridiculous. We're still untangling the laws to this day.
Yeah.
But that is the bright side to look at it. We're untangling them.
Oh yeah. Oh,
without him, we wouldn't be untangling them.
Absolutely.
And that was, I said to Matt earlier, he was fighting the huge battle of not only teaching people not to be mentally suppressed, he was stopping people from being legally suppressed.
Yeah.
That's why he was so important. And it's our movement moving forward to continue that work. And I feel that most of the world feels that way. And we do it every day. Once we find something wrong, we definitely change it. The right likes to call it cancel culture, but there's a fine line between right and wrong. And I think the center of the aisle kind of gets that. And that's changing things for the better.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, to think like MLK was a controversial figure is just so ridiculous, because what he's saying in that clip is, I love what you just said, John. It was legal segregation, and he's going after that, not because he wants preferential treatment. He wants to have a society where everybody benefits under the law. That's the big takeaway here. Everybody's free. Exactly. No one's segregated based on skin color. To John and me, that's like so incredibly foreign to hear, because it's like we were raised after this generation raised us in a society that was essentially, and I hate to use the phrase colorblind, but it was transitioning away from that. And we were taught, don't look at somebody that has different skin color and say, well, they're, that you're better than they are. That's not how you're supposed to treat that way. So that's huge. And because they had every right, the blacks had every right in the South to violently attack the government down there.
Oh,
the
absolutely.
Government was using all kinds of physical provocation. And by physical provocation, attack dogs, fire hoses.
You can just do research for 10 minutes on YouTube and see how bad it was.
It was horrible.
Yeah. It was not a nice time.
No. And for him to take the stand that he did, where they had every right to fight back, and he's like, we're not going to do that. We are going to march in arms together and address these legal segregation laws.
And beat the system at the system, which that's the coolest part about him. He beat the system using the system.
Big time.
That's why he's one of my favorite people of all time. He used his voice. He used his celebrity for good.
Yeah.
He was like, he knew that if he got enough following, he got enough people behind him, he could look straight in the government's eye and go, bleep you, I'm making a change. And they had to bow to him. And that's what I hope we can figure out now, because we're going through tough times now. We need to figure out of coming together and looking like he did, looking the government in the eye and be like, we're not okay with this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And well, then he also there's no question, he got a lot of really great supporters behind him, which led to probably one of the more landmark Supreme Court cases in the history of the country, Brown versus Board of Education. That essentially removed any sort of segregation within any high school down in the South. Just completely removed it. They knew the Supreme Court ruled. I'll have to look to see like what the justices' rulings were. I'm hoping it's 9-0. It better have been, or whatever. But it was almost a unanimous decision. I'm hoping. Yeah. that it was essentially like
from the last
remove the segregation from down there. I mean, it was really, really bad.
And that ruling was, I remember hearing stories from a couple guys that grew up in the South that I bowled with years ago. Bowling alleys, closed down, of course, for Martin Luther King Day. But I remember the next night talking to a couple older gentlemen. I was like in my late teens, early 20s. And three of these gentlemen were in Alabama at the time the ruling came down, and it was over the radio. And it's a big thing in my life, like to hear this story. Like it made a huge impact in my life because I didn't know anything about it. I was a 19-year-old kid that grew up in Pennsylvania. I didn't know anything about segregation, but hearing this story from these gentlemen that they were literally like heard it on the radio and ran outside and ran up and down their street celebrating. Really cool. Dude, really cool. That's what kind of impact it had.
Yeah. I don't think
it's not manufactured impact like we have now, but that was actual. They were waiting by their radio to hear great news.
Yeah, and they did.
And that story just came to me as you were telling me.
That's such a great story. Thanks for sharing that, John. That's awesome. Love that. Yeah, I mean, the impact that MLK had on the entire country was absolutely profound and in such a great way. John, let's pull up the second video if you would. This is Martin Luther King's last speech. It's called the Mountaintop Speech, world famous. I'm just going to let John play this clip.
I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Yeah, there you go. Two Noobs Talking right there.
Yeah.
Stop share, ran away.
That, John,
great speech.
That's just 1 minute of it.
There's not much to say. Really funny story. Knowing a lot about speeches and following people that are really great at speeches. I saw this interview long time ago. It's by a wrestler, Bray Wyatt. You know him very well.
Yep.
He said when he was, really trying to get into going into early in his career, going into those long diatribes that he had as a wrestler, he said that he researched Martin Luther King because Martin Luther King had a dialect that he knew if he could figure it out, he could capture people. And that blew my mind, like hearing him say that, because if you just listen to like your body stops when he talks.
Yeah.
Like when he was that speech, like you could hear people, jumping up. They're ready. They were ready to do anything for anything because the man he spoke from this place.
A lot of passion, a lot of great passion, and a lot of great conviction. And I think that's what probably the best speech givers, I should say,
yes,
really do. They give something that they know and they have a strong belief in, and they're able to communicate in a way that you feel as though you're also giving that speech, but you, on the receiving end of hearing something like that, want to do exactly what Martin Luther King did. And I think that's the legacy that he leaves behind, always leaves behind in our country. And I'm glad he's woven into the fabric of this country, John. I really am, because it's like,
he's
without him, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. We'd be living in a segregated world right now. Still,
he's definitely one of the good ones. And I hope someday, I know that, through mass media and through, the hustle and bustle of life, that these days aren't as important as they should be. But hopefully we are releasing this, by, noon on Martin Luther King. So anybody that hears this on Martin Luther King, please just take 15 minutes and reflect on what that man actually did.
Yeah.
If I could do a 10th of what he did in the world, I would consider myself an extremely wealthy and great person.
Yeah.
He was to me, he was one of the phenomenal ones, really, like phenomenal human beings that have ever walked this earth. And tragically, his life got cut short because people can't agree, and that sucks. But I don't want his legacy ever to die, and I will do my best as long as I'm living to keep telling stories about him and sharing with anybody that I can about how great of a person he was.
The great thing about good, John, really, when you stop to think about it, is that it always remembers those that fight for it. And Martin Luther King fought for good. Not many people know of his assassination, or what I mean by that is who pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
You have to look it up in order to find it. And that guy might have thought that he was going to change the world, for putting people back in, the current state that they were in.
Yeah.
Did exactly the opposite, and it galvanized so much positive feedback. And, we were on the receiving end. I think of this, we're on the receiving end of that generation that we grew up in something like, we don't have to worry about being segregated. We were fortunate enough to live in the suburbs of Philadelphia where it was intermingled. We were all over the place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's his legacy. That's what he believed in.
Very, very true. Very true.
So yeah.
His legacy is bigger than we could put into words.
Well, I'm so thankful that he was woven into this country's fabric, as flawed as this country is at times. This guy, this beacon of light we had in our country, was there, and he should rank right up there with the founders, with Washington, with Lincoln, with all those folks that really have made this country great and have made this country what it is today. We just need to remember that legacy. I think you said it well. Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. So that wraps up episode 14 of Two Noobs Talking. This really flew by, John. My gosh. Where can people find us, man?
So on socials, we can do Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler.com when it comes back. It's not going to be back for a week or so, but if you followed us on Parler, we'll be back when it's Parler.com. Videos, we're on YouTube, BitChute.com, and Rumble. Please keep going, Rumble. You're rumbling us. We like it. We like to see those numbers rising. With BitChute, you're awesome. YouTube, also good views, but love BitChute, love saying it. But Rumble, I love you stepping up your game. Audio podcast, we are Apple, Spotify, but nobody listens to us on Spotify. Google Podcasts, people do listen to us there. iHeartRadio, people do listen to us there.
Nice.
And Podbean, who controls us, it's Two Noobs Talking 215-512 podcast. Nice. That's how you can search us on any audio where podcasts are available.
Awesome. And of course, our show notes. And our show notes not only are right here for our audience that could barely be seen, but we will have a link to the description. You can find us there, TwoNoobsTalking.wordpress.com. All the links of all the articles we compiled, the Talk is Jericho podcast, the two Martin Luther King, video clips that we shared, all those will be in the show notes for today's episode as well. John, got anything final to say, man?
Yeah, don't go down the rabbit hole.
Love it. Talk to y'all next week and take care.